Exercise during your period, tips and tricks. All right, before you get upset with me saying, why is there this dude telling me why I should exercise or not exercise during my period in different phases? Well, I've trained so many women in my career since 2006, actually probably a little bit more female to male. So when we're talking about cis women and menstruation and having periods here, I promise you, I know what I'm talking about. Famous actress Rachel Brooksmith, I started doing this with her when she was preparing for her movie Legend of the White Dragon. You've probably seen her in Bring It On too, a bunch of different movies too. And she really felt differently when I started training her this particular way based off of her cycle and how she was feeling. Now, as far as exercising during your period, it varies a little bit. If you're feeling like crap, I'd be a jerk to say like, oh, you gotta crush it today. You gotta go as hard as you possibly can during one of your heavy flow days. You're losing a lot of blood and fluids, and you're probably not feeling as good as you possibly could. And there's actually 4 different parts of your period, which we're gonna go over. Now, before I talk about these specific cycles and the hormones that are involved with it, I want you to start tracking your cycle. So from day 1 of bleeding, I want you to track that all the way throughout 28 days, all the way to the point when you start bleeding again, through ovulation, all that sort of stuff. And when you wake up, how you feel, okay, how your sleep is, if you're craving different things, if you're angry, if you're more emotional, less emotional, if you want to have people over, if you want to be around people, all these things are going to vary. So everybody is different, and on average, you have a 28-day cycle. Now, a cis female has 4 phases of her menstrual cycle: menstrual, follicular, ovulation, and luteal phase. Now, the first phase of your cycle is the menstrual phase. For a cis woman, this is when they start bleeding on day 1. It generally lasts 3 to 7 days on average. This is the point in your period where estrogen and progesterone levels plummet down. But then in the second week, they will start to peak up, causing you to feel more energized and probably feel a lot better. This would be the time to just get after that workout nice and hard. Now, the next phase is the follicular phase. This overlaps with your menstrual phase. Okay, this lasts for about 16 days on average. This is when the pituitary gland stimulates follicle releasing hormone, or FSH. Now, this is triggering ovulation. Now, while you're ovulating, your luteinizing hormone, or LH, will release and your estrogen will increase. You ever feel that warm feeling during this phase? Well, that is what's happening. It's very common during ovulation, warm and fuzzy, right? Now, after your menstrual, follicular, and ovulation phase, you have your luteal phase, which will give you a bump in both progesterone and estrogen levels, which will then drop again once your cycle starts over. Now, this is the phase when PMS symptoms like weight gain, fluctuations, headaches, cravings, irritability, sleep issues, and bloating will occur. I know, I'm glad I'm not a female. I feel for you. I really do. It's no fun. Now, the luteal phase lasts anywhere from 11 to 17 days, with 14 being the average. During your mid-luteal phase, right, you'll experience an elevation in core temperature, which could affect how tired you get during your workouts. Now, this might be the time during your cycle when you're working out and you're just feeling more exhausted. Maybe you're more thirsty and you heat up much faster, which means that your workouts will feel that much harder, especially when you're working out outside in the heat. So there's a lot going on during these different phases, and here are my recommendations based off of working out during the phases and what you're eating and how you're gonna feel. Now, the menstrual phase, as I said earlier, is 3 to 7 days on average. This is when hormone levels are at their lowest. You're likely to feel a little bit weaker, but the feelings of weakness won't actually inhibit your ability to gain strength. That's a good thing. Now, going too hard during this phase of your workouts could cause you to become more tired and place stress on your cardiovascular system. So this is the time when you want to make sure that you get proper rest and sleep. Now, you might be drained during this time, so schedule more workouts working in exercises. So we've got working out where our heart rate's elevated, we're lifting weights, we're doing sprints, we're taking classes, all that sort of stuff. And we have working in, which maybe you want to focus on yoga, Tai Chi, Pilates, something where you're really focusing on that inner you. Maybe you want to journal a little bit more during this phase and you'll feel much better. Now, if you want to think about your resistance training during this time, just be aware of the volume load, okay? So how many sets times by reps times by the weight that you're lifting. You may want to take longer breaks in between the exercises. This might not be the time to go for a crazy HIIT class or something like that. Maybe focus on strength training exercises and take 2 to 3 minutes at least between each exercise. No need to go crazy giant sets where you're doing 5 or 6 exercises within one circuit. Now the follicular phase, this lasts about 16 days. And once you've stopped bleeding, you might feel a sudden increase in energy and mood. This is a good time to try new things. If you're more welcoming to people during this time, maybe you want to take classes, you want to try something new, you want to do a spin class, kickboxing, something like that. Your willpower will actually increase during this time. So that's why I say maybe you should try something new, but also you can avoid the bad food. You know that if you're going to have that pizza or that ice cream, that's something that you want to try to stay away from, that willpower will be up. So this is the time to really hone in on your nutrition as well. As far as workout suggestions during this phase, group classes, resistance training, hiking, sprints, rebounding, pretty much anything hard and in a group setting you can do, or even on your own. This is the time to really get after it, especially if you want to do that circuit type resistance training, which is very important. Your luteal phase, 11 to 17 days here. You'll have higher testosterone and estrogen levels during the first 5 days of this phase. Now, you'll have a higher than normal pre-workout heart rate, so be aware of that. You'll also have less oxygen consumption, meaning you can't take in as much oxygen and utilize it as well, so you might get out of breath a little bit faster. And there's other markers for endurance that might be down a little bit during this phase. Now, the workout suggestions. During the 5 days, use the elevated testosterone and estrogen to really get after it and use it to your advantage. So these high estrogen levels trigger pain masking tolerance, meaning you can push those weights harder, you can sprint faster, you can get a little bit further, you can go a little bit harder. So during these first 5 days, get after it, all right? Then in the second half of this phase, you want to switch to lower intensity workouts and maybe flexibility training. This is the time that you're likely to get more exhausted. And if you work out too long, your workouts can be catabolic, meaning muscle wasting. So if you're doing the resistance training, you're doing the interval training, try to keep your workouts at 30-minute or less so you're not spiking those cortisol levels too much where that workout becomes catabolic to you. You don't want to be doing that. So just be aware that the performance may be down a little bit. Now, during the second half of this phase, you may actually want to bump up your carbohydrates more. Yes, you heard me right. Bump up those carbs a little bit more because you need those carbohydrates to actually blunt the cortisol a little bit. Having carbs can actually help increase dopamine levels and blunt cortisol levels. So bump up the carbs a little bit more pre-workout, post-workout, and use this phase to your advantage. Now, if you're training for a race and you need to do high intensity interval training, something like that, be aware during this phase that that heart rate is going to be higher, okay? So just track that. I know when I'm training clients and they've got to get to a certain goal or a certain amount of time, especially during this phase, I'm aware of their heart rate, so I want them to track it. I'm not telling you not to do sprints during this phase, just be aware that the heart rate is going to be elevated a little bit longer, so taking a little bit breather might be the option, or skip the interval altogether and save it for another part of your phase. You can always go back and do a 2 a day, something like that, or add it to the end of your weight training if you really wanted to get those in there, okay? This is all cumulative effect on your body. And let's not forget about the mind too. If you give yourself permission to take a day off or maybe do a light walk or a morning fasted light cardio, this could be the time to do so. And the ovulatory phase. This is about 3 to 4 days. Now, this is the phase when you have the highest levels of testosterone and estrogen. Why? Well, you're horny during this time. Your body is saying, I want to get pregnant, so it's flooding you with those good hormones that you can utilize. So utilize this time to really get after it, you're gonna feel so much better. Workout suggestions, this is anything that you wanna go hard with, okay? Push yourself, maybe even do 2-a-days. As I said before, if you skipped a workout during other phases when you didn't feel as good, this is the time to really get after it. Those testosterone levels are peaked, the estrogen is up, you're gonna feel so much better. You're going to be able to push yourself that much harder. Now let's talk about hydration during your cycle. Hydration is incredibly important anyway, so see my salt video about that. Now in particular, you need to increase your hydration during your mid-luteal phase, and not just water. Bump up those electrolytes as well, add some sodium to your water, to your meals. This is the time to really replenish that as you're losing more electrolytes, in particular sodium. So 2 hours before a workout, have about 16 to 18 ounces of water. 30 minutes before your workout, have some electrolyte mixture with some sodium in there. If it's electrolytes, it's gonna have sodium, and you can drink it during the workout and after as well. Now, if working out longer than an hour, drink a sports drink or coconut water as well, or definitely add some extra electrolytes. Post-workout, here's the deal. I want you to weigh yourself before workout and after workout so we can replenish those lost fluids. So you have 16 to 24 ounces of water for every pound you lose through sweat. Yes, you can probably lose a pound of sweat. Okay, so you can also have foods that contain water as well, like watermelon, grapes, lettuce, something along those lines that'll help replenish you as well. And a lot of people don't talk about that. What should you eat during your cycle? Well, your body can break down different macronutrients during different phases of your cycle. Protein, very important in general. Now your body's gonna break down more protein with increased catabolism to fuel your cellular processes with peak progesterone levels in your luteal phase, okay? So you wanna make sure, especially in the luteal phase, that you have that protein and you're hitting those protein numbers. I've got other videos on that, but in general, search for like about 1 gram per pound. This is the time to bump up the protein, especially if you're training at a high intensity level. Once again, during that breakdown process in the luteal phase. Carbs. Carbs. Now carbs, when you're fasted during your follicular phase, you can perform better overall. Although when fueling with carbs before the workout, performance was matched in a study. So you can have your carbs before a workout, you can have your carbs after a workout. I promise carbs are good, so don't be afraid of them. So this happens because estrogen and progesterone peak during this phase. Your body can suppress energy stores or gluconeogenesis. Yeah, we don't even need to edit that. It's so hard to say. Gluconeogenesis. There we go. Now, where your body converts non-carb sources into energy, but it's not as efficient at doing that. So adding some carbs during this phase will give you energy. So during that follicular phase, bump up the carbs a little bit, pre or post workout, or just overall throughout the day, okay? I guarantee you, you will feel so much better, but make it clean carbs, all right? And there you have it. There's my suggestions for working out around your period, your 28-day cycle. And I fully recognize I am not a female, okay? But I have worked with so many females, and so many of them benefit from this material and being aware of your cycle. Now, if you feel great throughout the entire 28 days or throughout your entire cycle, then keep kicking ass at life. Every body is different. These are not hard and fast rules. This is just what the research is saying. Okay, so every single client that I do this with, they really feel so much better. Why? Well, because they gave themselves the permission to change their workouts accordingly. And yes, that helps their body, but more importantly, it helps their mind. Thanks for being here. If you like this video, please share it. There's not a lot of information out there about working out with your menstrual cycle, and I promise you, you're gonna feel so much better. Just give yourself that permission. I'm Joey Thurman at Joey Thurman Fit on all the social channels. You know what to do. Thumbs up, share, all that sort of stuff. Subscribe. Cheers, bro.